What's going on, everybody? Sam Shapiro back here with more of your Heat latest here on FanArc. Don't forget to drop a like on this video. And of course, subscribe to our channel for great daily content, all pertaining to your Miami Heat right here, Monday through Friday. A lot of action to break down from Media Day yesterday, all going on. I know I misspoke in the last episode, happening at the Kaseya Center yesterday, with now training camp kicking off today in Boca Raton at FAU. But diving into the action, a lot of great comments from some of the players, especially Tyler Herro himself, kind of breaking down more of an accurate timeline of kind of the timetable of when we could maybe expect him to return. Interesting kind of revelation, him talking about an extra bone in his foot kind of playing a role also, and well, having to remove that extra bone out of his foot kind of playing a role in kind of the whole situation with his ankle injury and the procedure that kind of followed. But ultimately, Tyler kind of explaining at Media Day that it's probably going to look more like an 8 to 12 week timeline, and him also kind of saying that he initially told Spoelstra it'd be 6 weeks. So I don't want to say that a 6 week timeline for Tyler Herro's return is a very confident kind of really a timetable of when he could potentially return for Miami this upcoming regular season. But I would say the initial reports that we were seeing, him being out for at least the first 8 weeks of the regular season, it could maybe, I see maybe more at least on the 10-week side. I don't necessarily think it's going to be 12 weeks, but, it seems like based on his comments, he is really kind of confident that it could potentially be when he comes back, he's definitely going to be healthy and ready to go for the remainder of the regular season, hopefully into the playoffs. Him saying, quote, "Should be a full recovery and I'll be back soon. I'm doing everything I can to be back on the court and be available. I can't wait to be out there playing." So again, him kind of expressing that it really could be an 8 to 12 week timeline at Media Day yesterday is I'm not entirely surprised, just given that really over the course of this entire, summer, the kind of pinching he had kind of felt in his ankle, and then him leading to kind of ultimately experiencing some limited mobility with that ankle. Not really the biggest surprise in the world. Again, I never knew that he had an extra bone in his foot, and I don't know how necessarily common that is amongst NBA players, really, but it was interesting to kind of hear from him straight up more on kind of the entire scenario with how that was really looking. And although he was probably a little bit more optimistic initially in telling Spoelstra it could have been 6 weeks, I think he used Media Day to kind of bring kind of a sense of reality to, hey, this might be a little bit longer than Thanksgiving that I could potentially be out, which I thought was also interesting because it kind of bled more into Spoelstra's comments that he made over the course of Media Day, him saying that he's kind of open to the idea of playing more options throughout this regular season, including kind of Terry Rozier saying that he had kind of been working all summer long. He'd lost nearly 10 pounds just through working out with the team. And then while he wasn't even working with the team, he was trying to kind of find any pickup scenario that he could get himself into. So to see these comments, especially from Spoelstra, I thought was very particularly interesting, considering over the last couple of weeks we've been talking about how Miami seemed very over and done with Rozier, and given how his role with the team kind of was last year, almost seemingly non-existent to some extent, it's really it seemed like a little bit of a flip the script scenario, but that also kind of bleeds into more of Spoelstra's comments saying this was kind of an opportunity to really have a lot of the players they've been developing, especially now with this new roster, this new look roster without Jimmy Butler, kind of giving a lot of players ultimately the potential to pop and really not just develop their game, but ultimately contribute to a collaborative effort in seeing how this team is going to be successful. The average age of this team being at roughly 26 years old. This is a young team that's going to want to play fast, and now not relying on necessarily a Herro and Bam, led team to kind of lead the way. Obviously, Bam is still going to be a focal piece in leading this team. Other guys like Wiggins and Powell are definitely going to have to fill in that gap as well. And then also kind of seeing Powell suit up in a Heat uniform, especially with media around him being very vocal about how he kind of wanted to kind of capitalize on a similar scenario in Miami that he had experienced last year with the Clippers and Kawhi Leonard being out and him having to step up at least on the scoring front. Obviously, that experiment worked very well for him, and now him kind of being confident, at least him expressing, at least in some regard, in Media Day yesterday to that volume that now we could potentially, hopefully, see Norman Powell maybe take some sort of borderline all-star role in the absence of Tyler Herro. Now he's obviously going to have to be one piece that really steps up, and seeing the confidence, not necessarily in that being a definitive narrative, but being one of those players or pieces in this Miami team that could kind of have to really pop, is going to be an exciting thing to watch. So seeing the confidence from Spoelstra and really saying, we're kind of just playing our options right now, and it's really kind of a lot of different players' opportunities to kind of continue to develop their game and have to step up in the absence of having one of our cornerstone players out. It's interesting to see him now more putting his eggs in we're just going to have to see what options, what pick and play, in options within the rotation in and out are going to work and what isn't. And I think it's very interesting to see that Rozier now kind of in the big conversation with being one of those pieces that could potentially be really kind of contributing to Miami's success in the grand scheme of things. It was interesting to see kind of his comments regarding what he had to say at Media Day. He also said during the live stream interviews that were going on Miami Heat's YouTube channel, quote, "I get the opportunity to go out there and showcase the Terry Rozier that everybody's been wanting to see." And I think a lot of people were, not saying, oh yeah, now this is totally going to happen with Tyler Herro being out of the mix. But the potential for that scenario now seems a lot more realistic, especially compared to what it was a few weeks ago. Now with this backcourt kind of looking like Davion Mitchell is going to be a main option, and seeing how those two players kind of complement each other, hopefully can kind of speak volumes to this quote I just read from Terry Rozier, and hopefully he will kind of become that player that everybody, really wants to see, the version of him that we had kind of seen in Charlotte and Boston. And I think now the opportunity kind of presents itself, and it seems like despite all the talks of Miami even waiving him at this point, the confidence is there despite the speculation of how he could still potentially fit in this role and what he is ultimately going to do for Miami's team going forward. So again, it was nice to kind of just see him express that confidence, because we didn't really know where we were going to see him in all this scenario. And then seeing the reports that he was going to be at training camp, which starts today, and then also being at Miami Heat's Media Day yesterday as well, was just a very, it's all kind of a very flip the script narrative to me. But it seems like instead of Miami looking on necessarily Bam Adebayo to lead the charge, it's really going to be a young team that wants to play. It's going to be a very different type of scenario than what we saw, especially over the last two seasons, where it was kind of just a group of guys rallying around Jimmy Butler and kind of being his backup squad, in addition to, Butler kind of leading the charge for this team on both sides of the ball. It's really going to be a team effort in moving the ball fast, trying to play quickly, and taking advantage of some of those younger, fresher legs that now Miami kind of has throughout their rotation. Not necessarily saying they were going to make a finals run or be a final contender type of team, but with the excluding Shai Gilgeous-Alexander from the equation, this is kind of similar to an OKC team that we saw, a couple seasons prior, when they weren't really even looking like a major playoff contender type of team, just when they had a lot of younger guys and they were kind of looking at maybe, typically younger teams try to play fast. Miami definitely trying to, I feel like, use this opportunity to capitalize on a transition game, which necessarily isn't their strongest suit in the grand, or at least hasn't been in the seasons prior to this one. So I think that Terry Rozier, while he's not one of the younger guys on this team, could definitely kind of facilitate that, and seeing his confidence in these words definitely was a nice sight to see, considering that Miami wasn't so high and mighty on maybe keeping him around to, at least until maybe maybe even a week prior to the time I'm, saying all of this here on your Heat Latest. But now kind of moving over to some other comments from an ad that Miami had kind of just recently made. Precious Achiuwa seeming to be very happy to be back in the 305, and was happy to be at Media Day starting the regular season for Miami in the grand scheme of things. He, on the same live stream, said, quote, on his return to Miami, "It fits the way of the type of person I am. So for me, coming back here was an easier decision, just because the organization kind of embodies the type of player I am. Spo himself is a high-level competitive coach, so I want to be around that." And him also voicing that he wanted to be part of that, straight up himself kind of doesn't only confirm some of the reports we had seen Miami and Achua being mutually interested in that reunion, but it seems like he would like to see some sort of guaranteed deal kind of come to fruition, and he wants to kind of be part of this young team that's going to play the ball quickly, where a lot of guys are going to have an opportunity to step up. There are going to be a lot of extra minutes now on the table without Tyler Harrow, so guys like Jovic are definitely going to have to step up. Jaime Jaquez also weighing in, saying that there were a lot of parts of his game he had definitely had to work on, and he wasn't necessarily happy with how he played over the last couple of seasons. So now players like that will get the opportunity to capitalize on their game and hopefully play a part in more of a collaborative effort to seeing how this team is going to really play as a team and not necessarily try to give opportunities to guys like Tyler Harrow and Bam Adebayo. Granted, it creates a bigger question mark on, in clutch time situations, who's going to step up, who's going to take those big game-winning shots. And obviously, you have a guy like Bam that could potentially be there, but now, and I'm not saying Precious Achua is going to be this guy that's going to step up in those scenarios, because in all honesty, probably not. He's probably going to be a decent part in the rotation, at least on the big man front, that's going to help contribute to guys maybe like even Nikola Jovic, or in this case, Norman Powell, who's, like I had just mentioned in previous seasons, had to step up in the absence of a superstar player being out in Kawhi Leonard with the Clippers. But now he's kind of one of those players, in addition, I think, to Andrew Wiggins, that's going to be looked at as maybe one of those players that could kind of help contribute to Miami going forward. And that kind of begs the question now, with training camp starting today, what we can kind of expect to see out of this roster. And it's going to be especially how this team is going to maximize plug and playing in different scenarios, different type of players, how they're going to try to move the ball faster, because they can't necessarily rely on a one or two superstar type players. Now, I'm not saying Tyler Harrow or Bam is a Ja Morant or a Giannis Antetokounmpo, like a team that maybe if those players were out would definitely kind of have to rework certain things. But this is a definitely new look Miami team, and to see the confidence that Spoelstra is kind of willing to try to experiment, plug and play, and see what players can really pop in these rotations, it kind of seems like this Miami team is a lot more open-minded in going about how this regular season is going to take off. And they're not necessarily banking on one or two guys that they're going to be looking at least at this point in time, to take some of those clutch game-winning shots. And it's really going to be who could potentially have the best shot and could help put Miami in the most successful position. I'm also curious to see how some of these other players like Myron Gardner are going to face up. Gabe Matson, if he could potentially be a Duncan Robinson type player for Miami, if they have some sort of role in this Miami, or in this rotation really, that is kind of experimenting who could really reach the highest potential in terms of their ceiling of play. But I think a lot more eyes now are going to be on Norman Powell, especially him voicing that he's confident in being one of those shot-creating options, especially in the absence of Tyler Harrow. Him and Andrew Wiggins, I feel like, at least to start the season, are going to be two of those guys that are going to be looked at for maybe taking some of those more clutch, game-winning scenario type of shots. But to see Miami and what they had to say over the course of this media day, it seems like they are very open to seeing what kind of plug and play options are going to really work and what isn't going to work, and who is going to contribute to helping really the entire team play more fast paced on both sides of the ball, and really, again, taking advantage of the youth that this roster kind of has and moving in a new direction from this post Jimmy Butler era. So it's going to be exciting to see how that kind of plays out all at training camp, what's going to work, what's not going to work, because I think if Rozier doesn't kind of fit in that experiment, that's really going to be really what we're going to see in terms of if Miami is confident that this could potentially bring out a ceiling for Rozier as well. Training camp starting today, going to be running at FAU in Boca Raton until October 3rd. So again, I'm just excited to see how the words of Spoelstra saying, this is kind of an opportunity for anybody really to step up and to really pop in terms of what they can bring to this team. But we'll just kind of have to wait and see, and hopefully training camp will be a teaser to see which guys will maybe kind of lean on the side of potentially taking up some of those minutes that are now going to be on the table in the absence of Tyler Herro. But that's going to do it for today's episode here, your Heat latest here on FanArc. Don't forget to drop a like on this video, and of course subscribe to our channel for great daily content, all pertaining to your Miami Heat right here Monday through Friday. Thanks so much for joining us on this Tuesday's episode of your Heat latest. I'm Sam Shapiro. Have a great day.